So what are we asking for? Step 1, first we'll hope that Mayor Atwell and Senate Council members will reject the current proposal as it stands. It does not support the Blue Dot program goals of reducing fossil fuels, nor does it comply with the parking covenants as laid out in January 26th and July Senate report. What we're asking step 2 is either be specific and request Mr. Gardner to change the current 6-lot drawing to be green, complete, accurate, and fully functional. There's a list of things that would make them fully functional and save all the trees we possibly could, make it as green as possible. Or simply vote for less density, because that's the only true way we can reduce fossil fuels. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak for or against this application? If so, please come forward.
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Elizabeth Leptovsky. I live at 4927 Lemare Place. And I don't have anything else to say after that. It's all said right there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Peter Bricks and I live at 797 Halliburton. It's been a long haul, this project, and I think it could have gone along a lot quicker if in the beginning there was better communication. The day that Mr. Roger Tinney got involved, the communication to ourselves, and I believe with the neighbors as well, improved dramatically. You know, that was wonderful. Our concerns at 797 Halliburton are in relation to Lot 5 and Strata Lot B. And as Mr. Tinney described, he did move the lot, the building actual structure is 60 feet, I believe, here to the west. And he also said he would retain tree number 24. And that was our main concern, as well as keeping Lot 5 to the east. And as far as we're concerned, this has addressed our complaints or our concerns to the development. And therefore we do support it, as it was stated here tonight. As a resident and a home that uses Halliburton to exit, come and go, it's a very, very busy street. There's lots of kids coming to and from school and running for exercise, gym, and people going to work, people taking the bus. And honestly, I don't think committing all construction, entering and exiting the property by that street, it's so narrow, I don't believe that's a wise idea, honestly. That's just my opinion. It doesn't really affect this application, but I would think you would distribute the load and traffic for construction by all accesses, and not to actually hit the most narrow and the busiest street of all. And that's about all I have to say for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on this application for or against? Please come forward.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and members of Council. My name is Sue Connies and I live at 4936 Wesley Road. And everybody who has spoken eloquently, and I realise that they're all speaking about how this development impacts their own personal space. So for me, my house is the Rancho to one side of the development on Wesley Road. I've had good communications with Mr. Tinney and with Mr. Gardner when the house was next door was being knocked down and some of the shrubbery removed. I was informed that that would be happening, and they asked about any trees that I particularly wanted to remain in the portion of the shared, where the property line is shared. And I asked for 2 trees and 1 holly bush to be left, and they were. There was some damage to my fence. I have an enclosed backyard, I have a dog. And Mr. Garden himself came and repaired that, and also has promised that when the house is built next door and the landscaping is finished, that he will actually replace that fencing completely with new fencing, the same type of fencing that I have. So I'm, as I am concerned about my space, I have to say I have few concerns, and I found that my communication with Mr. Gardner and Mr. Kinney have been fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on for or against this application? Please come forward.
Evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Sean Plitter. I live at 4933 Wesley Road, directly across from the development. It has been a long haul, living through the rats from the houses that were there before, and then all the kids that were smoking up at lunch hour and on weekends, parties in there. Finally, the houses got taken down, so I thank the developer for doing that. The presentation that was done before was quite exhaustive, but I think if you build less houses, you're just counterintuitive to being greener, because the fewer houses you build, you still have people living there that need the services. So unless you attract more people to that area, the transit, as we know, only provides certain services. Unless you develop so many houses, transit's not going to increase their service. So if you only put 4 houses on there, it's not going to do anything. So to me, that's counterintuitive to what is needed there. Also, that doesn't fit in with the current community, the way it is, the size of the lots and the type of houses. I want to see a big development too, and I've spent a lot of money redeveloping my house in the neighborhood, so I want to see a quality development go in there. I think the developer is proposing that. I've watched this thing go back and forth from a long time ago, from 7-lot subdivision to the 6, and then moving the panhandles to try and appease the neighbors, and back and forth, and on it goes here. So I mean, it's got to come to a head here, and I think push has got to come to shove, and we got to move ahead. I think the developer is trying his best, but he's got to make some money out of this too, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wish to speak? Please come forward. Calling for a second time. Any members of the public wish to speak? Calling for a third time. All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Tinney back up to the microphone to respond to some questions.
You want me to bring the site plan back up? Would that be useful?
Actually, I think if you could take the slides from the first presenter and just back up one to their ask, I think we could start there.
Back here. It's back here.
That's going to be the second to last slide.
I might need you to give me a hand with that. I just don't want to wipe out her presentation.
Sure.
I kind of enjoy the cartoons.
I made some notes, but these slides are very good, and I think it'd be useful to refer to them.
Sure.
Okay. The next one, actually.
Second one?
There we go.
Next one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you meant her slides. I thought you wanted me to go back to my slideshow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, it was her slides I was referring to.
All good. Go ahead.
So this is a very comprehensive set of comments from the community put together by this first speaker. And the 5 points here speak to trees saved, rezoning, issues with parking spaces. Would you mind going down the list that's on the slides and addressing the comments?
Sure. With regard to trees, bullet point number 1, critical root zones, I've been relying almost exclusively on the Saanich Parks Department and our arborist to make sure that the two of them are satisfied that the proposal is being put forward can function as presented. They've indicated to me that it can. Saanich Parks has said they're fine with it, and the number of trees to be saved or not saved has been identified. And we also discussed with them in a fair bit of detail about driveways and accesses off of the cul-de-sac and how those root zones could be protected, and there's methods for that, which they said can be implemented and have been successful elsewhere. So I'm kind of relying on their professionalism and their direction to make sure that happens. So that's bullet number 1. The idea of the 2 parking stalls, which would get added to that central parking area, that can be done. Personally, I think it's a little bit excessive. I certainly understand the intent of the residents of not wanting to have traffic parked out in their cul-de-sac. But to add those 2 stalls back in, we're now looking at roughly 16 parking stalls to serve 2 residential dwellings. And to me, that just seems a little excessive. Personally, I'd rather leave it green and go with 2 less stalls. But I mean, if it's a deal breaker and they really want those 2 stalls in, I'm quite sure the owner would go along with that. And I know the council chamber in a public hearing is not the time to get into design details and which one's the best, but you know, it's not overly complicated. And again, if those 2 parking stalls are really critical to this thing moving forward, then I'm sure we can make that happen. Place house on lot 5 as it has existed. Drawn off 17 years. Is house number 5 the one you're referring to beside Liz's house?
Sorry,
Lot 5?
yes.
Yeah.
So that was the one to save 324 and 26. So that
Right.
gets Peter would give the privacy.
Right. I thought by moving the house westward and slightly to the south that did achieve that. I was actually a bit surprised when Laura was making that comment. As I said, I thought by moving the house to the location it's in now that satisfied that issue. Could it be moved a little bit further? Probably. That's about the extent of the answer I can give you that at the moment, without getting out my drawing kit and looking at the site plan.
Okay.
In terms of RS12, it's an interesting comment. I mean, the lots are large. In fact, the land area as a whole, roughly 78,000 square feet, just shy of 2 acres. It's large enough that it could accommodate RS12 zoning, but of course, if we accommodate RS12 zoning, then the house size goes up accordingly. But of course, that it could be coveted back. But again, we thought we were doing the right thing by applying for RS10 zoning so that the house sizes were kept within the RS10 framework. And that was the whole intent behind RS10. So we're not looking at building monster houses here, and that was the reason behind the RS10 zoning. And in terms of the covenants, there will be a number of them attached to these properties, and we're fairly confident that it's going to be nailed down. And this, the very fact of the presentation that we're making this evening, and all the commitments that we're making and are being documented in the council minutes, I would hope that, and in conjunction with the covenants, would give the residents comfort that everything is going to be delivered as promised.
Thank you. Are there members of council who ask the question? Councilor Murdoch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is not for Mr. Tinney, it's for staff, just in response to Mr. Tinney's response to the questions. I just wanted to confirm that if council desired to include the 2 parking spaces and modify the siting slightly on lot 5, that wouldn't preclude us moving forward and concluding tonight's public hearing, that those are items that could be, perhaps that's a question for the clerk rather than the planner, that those are things that could be resolved between here and final reading.
Through the mayor, yes, that is correct, Councillor Murdoch. This item is not the subject of provision within the bylaw itself. This is development provision, and certainly council can make that recommendation this evening as we move forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Sanders and Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just referring to the recommendation. It says that this conforms to building scheme dated November 19th. So that, oh, this one's the 18th. Is this the building scheme? What's the building scheme look like?
It's text as well as the graphics that I showed you.
Okay, so because this one's the 19th, that talks about reduced exterior walls, vehicle parking. Is this the same one, or am I looking at something different?
That's the only building scheme you graphics over. Yeah.
Well,
That's
as
it.
far as the building scheme, it talks about building envelope, and it's referring to here about general form and character. You see that about this conforming to the siting, but the siting just says about the building envelope, and as we know, then that those pictures we got there, those houses can move anywhere in that building envelope.
Sure, it probably should say building footprint rather than building envelope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and this also refers to 6 lots. So I would suggest that we need an updated
Does that, sorry, to 6 lots or 7?
6.
Because that is the proposal.
Oh, that is the 6, pardon me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I've
but-
got lots, so we've been lost in how many lots we're talking around here.
But you are correct, it should reference building footprint, not building envelope.
Yes, so there needs to be a correction on that.
Yeah.
Other things, I've looked at these before, they'll often specify in the parking use, like talk about that these parking spaces aren't going to be used for recreation vehicles and those kind of things. There's nothing in here about this. This is very, very
Yeah.
loose.
Yeah, we were going to embed those directly into the covenant as line items for all of the properties.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, it doesn't,
Specifically the 2 straddle lots, so that those visitor parking stalls don't get used for other purposes.
okay, it doesn't actually say that in there, but I don't, well,
No,
thank you.
yeah. It's, and not to dwell on it, but the covenants that are being proposed, the building scheme in text and the graphics are to be read as one, as a sort of a 3-part document, if you will.
Is that the end of your questions, Councillor Sanders?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Councillor Bryce, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Mr. Tenney. There was a comment made in the presenter regarding limiting future development. I did not see that as even a potential, but I wondered if you wanted to react to that in order to sort of nail that down for the record.
And sorry, when you say limiting future development,
The speaker indicated that by moving lot lines, it would prevent further, and I felt the implication was further subdivision in the future.
I don't think that was her intent. It's not possible under the zoning, and if anyone wanted to, it's back through a full rezoning, public hearing and everything, so no, it's not possible.
Thank you. Councillor Haynes and then Councillor Brown.
Through the Mayor. I know that Laura's not up here, but I'll just mention, Laura, compliments on your presentation. Nice job on that, I enjoyed that. But one of the points you made in the presentation was a desire for the applicant to have a continuous line, the lot line on Halliburton, where the berm is, the berm, the fence and the trees. I actually enjoyed reading that because it reminded me of Saxon fortification, where if you wanted to keep the Danes out, yes, you would have berms, trees and fences. Anyway, can you just reflect, so, I know, can you just reflect on that suggestion, like why have you put that lot line there? I'm suspecting it's to give ample backyard to that house.
It is, yeah. It's a number of factors. It's to give ample backyard to that house, subsequently give ample backyard to the house in front of it. Panhandle lots, as you know, have to be larger than conventional lots. So it needs to be larger in order to meet the bylaw. And we are trying to keep the house that's in front of that facing Halliburton back from Halliburton as much as we can, because there needs to be some vehicle maneuvering so they're not backing out onto Halliburton. And furthermore, Halliburton is a very busy road, and we'd like to keep the house back as much as we could for privacy's sake.
So for quality of life.
A number of factors, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Tinney, I wanted to ask, you said that there wouldn't be a problem with putting in the 2 extra lots, so you're not suggesting that that lot line be moved, you could still do the 2 extra parking spaces?
We could, yeah,
Okay.
and like I say, if you're comfortable moving the application forward, I'm happy working with the acting director of planning, we can sort that out, it's not complicated.
Yeah, I just know my colleague lives in Estrada and the parking there is unbelievable. So I can understand the concerns of the community. And if suites happen to go in as well. The other thing I wanted to ask was, I think you said that the goal would be to do the construction staging on the lot on Halliburton Place. So how would that impact the immediate neighbors?
Well, I'll elaborate on that a little bit just so that everybody's clear. The intent right now, because Lemaire is a very quiet, dead-end cul-de-sac, it invites the traffic, the trades, the big construction trailers to park there. It would be a logical place to head to. What I'm trying to say is I'd like to try and bring the bulk of the traffic either in off of Halliburton or possibly some in off of Wesley, probably to a lesser degree on Halliburton Place. But have the primary traffic, because as you know, on a construction site, there might be, I'll make up a number, there might be 10 half-ton trucks arrive in the morning with all the framers and the concrete guys. They all need to park their vehicles largely for the day. So they're pulling into the site and they're there for perhaps 8 hours. So we'd like to get a bit of a staging area in off of Halliburton where those vehicles could come in and just disappear for the day. If there's other larger vehicles that might be associated with some infrastructure, underground servicing, possibly something like that might have to come in off of Wesley or Lemaire on isolated incidences. But the bulk I'd like to try and focus more towards Halliburton.
So is it your intention to develop some sort of construction management plan?
That's right.
It happens to be the #1 issue we get complaints about is as construction happens. And because these are cul-de-sacs and whatnot, I could just see a lot of
Absolutely.
vehicles blocking driveways.
Yeah, that's precisely what we're trying to prevent.
So you're committed to it. Okay, thanks.
Any more questions from the council? Okay, see now. Thank you, Mr. Tinney.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll ask council to debate on this. Councilor Merlo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I make a motion, I just wanted to clarify with the clerk if it would be, if we were inclined to have the 2 additional parking spaces and the reciting on lot 5 included as part of the recommendation. Would you see that as item 5?
Point to clarify, the recommendation currently asks for 6 parking spaces,
Yeah.
including 2 car garages and on-site parking for an additional 4 cars per lot. So you're referring to the parking spaces within the common property?
That's correct.
Correct. And the alignment for lot 5?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, what we would do is add it as point C, D in the motion under that final reading of the zoning amendment bylaw be withheld. We would just add that as a condition in there that the parking in the common property be 6
Right.
stalls.
So that would be, the parking would be included under 3C, and then an additional item for the siting within the common property. Okay, so if everybody understood what I just said, I'll move that recommendation.
Second.
The reason I'm supportive is I think the applicant has done, well, I'll back up. I see what we have before us this evening as a considerable improvement over what came to us going back quite a ways, even more so over what we saw in February. I want to commend the applicant and his representative, Mr. Tinney, for, I think, being thorough listeners to the neighbors, paying particular attention to the folks on Lemaire, and the concerns that they had raised, and I think even this evening taking additional measures to meet those requirements. I see that as quite extraordinary, actually. You don't often see somebody going to that level of agreement, but I think it definitely improves the application and will ultimately make this a more livable development. I'm not often supportive of a panhandle. I don't think it's the most attractive way to construct infill, but I think that it does tidy up what would have been a bit of a mess for the folks on Lemaire. And I think that it's been done in a way that's thoughtful and still protects privacy and provides some screening. So with those comments, and of course acknowledging, as I did when we met during Committee of the Whole and public hearing, the efforts toward Build Green Gold and Energuide 82, I should say, I think are certainly acknowledgements of the importance of some sustainable development. I know Councillor Dermond's going to say that this is a car-oriented development and contributes to our greenhouse gas emissions. I don't disagree, but I think that it's been done in the most thoughtful way possible. You know, there's really no, other than not building here, there's not a way to mitigate that. I'm hopeful that we see improved transit access in the future and the installation of some bike lanes that could help folks choose alternatives to the vehicle. But that notwithstanding, I think that the work that's been done here by the proponent is really excellent, and I thank them and I thank the neighbors for continuing the conversation to get it to this point.
Thank you. Councillor Dermond, your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I should thank Councillor Murdoch for starting my speech for me. But in any case, I also would like to thank the applicant, Mr. Tinney, for doing a much more thorough job of listening to neighbors and responding to neighbors. And without question, I think that has improved what is before council. However, as Councillor Murdoch implied, I have a philosophical problem with this development in the context that we find it. It isn't just the Blue Dot program, which I strongly support. We also have commitments in our OCP and in other documents indicating our need and desire to respond to climate change, to put density in the right places, to address issues of traffic congestion and things of that nature. Those are very good aspirational goals. They are not accomplished without making decisions that support them. This particular development in this particular community, which is a very lovely community, there's no question about that, but it is, as one speaker indicated, without question, a car-centric community. There is very limited bus service. I would have to respectfully disagree with the speaker who indicated we should put up more density up there to get better bus service. I don't think that's a constructive way to go. People are still going to have to go almost a couple of kilometers to a place where there are services available and shopping and so forth. It's not an area that's very walkable, and it's not all that cyclable. I admire the people in Lemaire Place who apparently cycle up and down the hill all the time. The last 2 trips out there, I did that, and it isn't easy. Most cyclists wouldn't do it. Really fit cyclists wouldn't, and that's great, but I think it's a real obstacle and a real block. So it is primarily car-oriented. If this was the only development that we were considering putting out in this kind of location, I wouldn't be as concerned because the impact wouldn't be that huge. But in the last term before this council, there were 3 or 4 applications came for Up on the Ridge, and council of the day decided to approve all of them. We have others coming forward that are going to consider putting development in the wrong place and less than an ideal place. And what happens when you do that, and it's very easy to do it because you look at each one independently and there are good features to it as there are to this development and so forth, and you let it slip by. What happens then is you get the cumulative death of 1,000 cuts. And your intentions to address climate change, for example, which is a monumentally huge problem, it is going to affect all of the fabric of the entire human society in a very negative way. If we didn't put a molecule of carbon in the atmosphere from now on, we would still face 30 to 40 years of increasing problems with climate change, simply because of the lag effect of the carbon we have already put there. It's something that and I don't refer this to anybody in particular, but our collective stupidity as a species to essentially go about deconstructing the life support systems of the only spaceship we have is quite remarkable and very unfortunate. This will add, as will other decisions that have been made and other decisions that we continue to make, to a lack of properly addressing that problem. We will contribute to increased traffic congestion. That affects the economic viability of the region. It affects the livability of the region. If you need to go somewhere and it takes you twice as long as you did before, your quality of life suffers. The only way we can change that is to make sure that we are very consistent in putting new density in the right place, or new additions. And I'm not saying, by the way, no units in a place like this. I'm saying that each time something comes up, it seems like, obviously, the owner wants to maximize, and it has been agreed to. And I think that's really problematic. As I said last night, there are no such thing as traffic eggs that suddenly hatch, and out comes the new traffic. All the traffic problems that we have and that are growing, and that we receive a huge number of complaints about, are a consequence of the land use decision.